I don't want to sign up for your newsletter, 2018. The crazy thing about this whole newsletter and pop-up thing in general is that, why in the hell would I give out my email address or anything else 1 second after entering a website? How and where exactly is the connection there that makes sense? I actually sent a strongly worded email to MIT Tech Review yesterday. There was an article on the front page, because they have 3 separate pop-ups on first entry to the site. Like WTF. Have you not heard of timed pop-ups, such as those that trigger past a certain element, or pop-ups that don't make you want to immediately close the site? It's so pathetic in such a 2005 trend, it's hard to believe people still do it in the most annoying way possible.
Have you not heard of timed pop-ups, such as those that trigger past a certain element, or pop-ups that don't make you want to immediately close the site? How about no pop-ups? Remember when browsers came with built-in pop-up blockers, so users didn't have to deal with them at all? Newsletter sign-ups are the same bullshit as 90-second style pop-ups, and everyone agreed we should block those then. Why are these different? I don't want timed pop-ups, or pop-ups that are more convenient. I want no pop-ups, and as soon as I see one I am closing the tab, and writing off the website as not worth my time. I don't mean to call you out specifically, I don't think you're arguing in favor of pop-ups, but I'm just confused why your initial response was to ask for lesser evil pop-ups, rather than no pop-ups at all.
They do it because it works. Many people on the internet are not tech-savvy, and they just assume that in order to view the content, they must input their email. It doesn't help that the close button is sometimes barely visible.
I've gotten to the point where if a site displays a pop-up, I just close the page. If I had the ability to remove that source from all future searches, I would.
What's the conversion rate though? How many of those people continue to read the emails sent out by said site? Feels like you'd get a lot of dead subscribers and opt-outs, and spam reports, not an active community or follower base.
If it is higher than 0, somebody somewhere can justify it.
As someone who used to work in marketing, this anecdotal, but in my experience working in marketing, it was often funny to me how little we had to validate the numbers we presented. My boss didn't care how many people actually clicked on the link in our newsletter. As long as we had a lot of subscribers, we were good.
Have you not heard of timed pop-ups, such as those that trigger past a certain element? In the sites I interact with, that is probably the majority of these pop-ups. You find them preferable. I find them just as annoying and counterproductive as Op is describing. For one thing, when your heuristics say I'm getting interested, that's when you decide to interrupt my attention. It's like they've intentionally decided to algorithmically make this as annoying as possible. When is the time we can interrupt the reader as annoyingly as we can? And as you say, even if I've read 35% of an article or something, it may still be the first time I'm interacting with a site. And why do I want to give them my email address?
I own an e-commerce company, and while I can't tell you the why, I can tell you that 6% of people fill mine out. Is it annoying? Yup. Would it absolutely, unequivocally, be a bad business decision to take it down? Yup. You know what else I've got on the site? One of those annoying little notifications that comes up in the bottom right to say, someone bought this 4 hours ago. I hate those things. I swore I'd never put them on my site. The problem is, when I swore that, I was making the same mistake that you are here, assuming that I was the target, and that everyone is like me. The reality is, they are not. And these things work well. They're ubiquitous on e-commerce sites for a reason.
So 6% of people fill yours out, meaning 94% of the people either ignore it, block it, or get angry and leave the site. How many of the 6% fill it out because they think they have to? How many just give you a garbage email address? If somebody wants to be part of your email list, most of them will find a place to sign up for it, and nobody will see your site as a slimy sales gimmick.
See, the problem here is you're projecting your feelings about pop-ups, which I totally get, to be clear, onto my business. From a business perspective, that's a bad thing to do. What I've done, and what countless other website owners have done, is operate based on data. I've done a lot of A/B testing of my email capture pop-up. I've tested content, timing, and whether or not it's there at all. How many of the 6% fill it out because they think they have to? How many just give you a garbage email address? Sub 3%. That one's easy to validate, and I've done so. You're calling it a slimy sales gimmick, which I think is somewhat harsher language than necessary. But the reality is most new users who hit my site come in from Facebook ads. I would wager that you and folks of your same mindset about the pop-up probably see advertising on social media as slimy as well. The people who come to my site clearly don't. What a lot of HN fails to realize is that the overwhelming majority of the world is not like HN and does not share the beliefs of the typical HN user vis-a-vis digital advertising, sales tactics, websites, etc.
Sometimes I feel it's time to build separate internet with a new protocol like Gemini, but better. A protocol THT is resistant to all the BS of modern web.
Despite this topic being brought up regularly, these pop-up forms do work. That's why everyone uses them. Disclaimer: I use them, and so do many of my competitors. Does a poor job of increasing conversions, is the opinion of someone that has never looked at the data. You can be sure that the people interested in conversions run analytics and A/B testing on everything. If these pop-ups did a poor job and there was a better alternative, you can be sure that everyone would have already migrated to that alternative. The rule of 7 can also be used to counter her argument. That is precisely why businesses try to get the email of visitors to have more interactions. Otherwise, for the vast majority of visitors, the first visit would be the only interaction they will ever have. Works against user goals might be true for short-term goals like jumping through the most amount of content. However, users have different goals, and short-term ones are often not the best goals. A pop-up might address other long-term goals the visitor cares more about than going to yet another web page. But more than anything, these pop-ups serve business goals because most of these websites exist only thanks to their revenue. Without them, my business would probably not be viable. I assume that many accept the small annoyance of a pop-up as the cost of keeping the websites they like running. And if the pop-up appears when the user is about to close the window, it does not even stop a visitor in his tracks. He can still close the window without any extra click.
Do you know the ratio of your annoyed versus subscribed via that pop-up users? I get terribly annoyed by them, and always wonder why they don't just add a section to the page where one can easily subscribe, if one seems it to be a worthy thing to do. Edit. Also, I want to add that sometimes I leave the page immediately because such a pop-up pops up. The cookie banners are annoying enough.
Ironically, the trend of having page design with low contrast text, as in this article, is almost as annoying as the newsletter stuff.
There is exactly 0% chance that I will subscribe to any newsletter when I haven't read even the first article on your site fully. Maybe if I see myself coming back to the site for insightful stuff, then I might consider a newsletter, but even that I'll subscribe to using my RSS reader, Newsblur.
There's a 0% chance I will subscribe to a newsletter willingly, even if I love your articles. I try very hard to keep the signal-to-noise ratio of my inbox tuned, because otherwise important things get lost in the deluge. I don't want your articles pushed to me on your time frame. I want to consume them in my own time, and for that an RSS reader is perfectly adequate.
Can't upvote this submission and the spirit of the post enough. These drive me absolutely crazy. The decentralized news opinion revolution is probably a net positive. But this specific behavior related to it drives me nuts.
Agree. Whoever invented it deserves to have their mouth washed with brown soap.
All of these complaints boil down to people wanting something for free, without any inconvenience at all, even something as minor as clicking an extra button. Unfortunately, most websites require an actual business model to consistently produce content. Business models usually need a form of lead gathering or audience building, which is frankly core to most businesses. If you don't want to engage with businesses, then there are still endless hobby websites out there that do little other than produce content for free, without any pop-ups, ads, upsells, etc.
This happens in brick and mortar too. It has become difficult to buy something in person without being asked to sign up for a frequent shopper program, sometimes very forcefully. Apparently, retailers despise the fact that some customers prefer to buy things anonymously, without being spammed, or having their privacy invaded. I predict B&M stores will soon begin to block you at the front door until you give them your email address.
A few brick-and-mortar store retailers around South Africa have started asking, "May, can I have your cell phone number?" when I'm making a purchase, to which I respond with either, "You don't need that," or simply, "Nope." When asked why, conversation typically goes like, Me. I don't want my phone being sent SMSs or phone calls from your company or anyone they would share my number with. Them. Oh, don't worry, that won't happen from us. Me. Well, it absolutely won't happen if you don't have my number.
Don't worry, as the tech illiterates slowly leave the internet, I bet the time of annoyment is finally coming to an end.